Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Corps studio. Welcome to the show. Okay, so the moment you've all been waiting for, all spoiler season for Foundations, as well as Jumpstart Foundations or Jumpstart 2025, whatever they're calling it. We're combining both of those because it's all basically coming out at the exact same time. The tier list rankings for brand new commanders, which are S tier, the top tier, which are D tier, the bottom tier. It's all in the vacuum of this set and Jumpstart. Let's jump into it. We're just going to start off with whatever Moxfield has ordered these in, which is apparently by mana value. First up, we've got Kellen, Planner, Trailblazer, and a reminder to all of you, hey, these are just my picks based off of my feelings on the cards, and yours might differ, and that's okay. It's coming from a casual perspective, but like higher end power casual perspective. Definitely not CDH, okay? Kellen, Planner, Trailblazer, though, is a 2-1 human fairy scout for a single red mana, and it's basically a Build-A-Bear commander. I like to call it a Build-A-Bear commander. Basically, 1 in a red. If it's a scout, becomes a human fairy detective. Gains whenever it deals combat to a player. Exile the top card of your library. You may play a card this turn. 2 in a red. If it's a detective, becomes a 3-2 human fairy rogue and gains double strike. Basically, you build the bear, and then it becomes a 3-2 that basically gives you, what, Impulse Draw 2 when it connects. It doesn't have any evasion, though, and also it does take a decent amount of mana to get it there. I mean, 6 mana in total, if I could count, to actually get there, which is not the worst thing. There are other ways to get around that-ish, other ways to just give double strike, of course, in red. Overall, it can be a very aggressive commander. You are in mono red, though. That is a little more limiting, although a lot of commanders in this set and Jumpstart are actually monocolor, so that's okay when it comes to comparing. And I do reserve the right to change these as I go. I do not have like a side list right now, but I'm going to put it as a C, okay? Kellen is a C tier commander right now. Again, once it gets going, sure, you've got a good amount of temporary card advantage. You can hit pretty hard. But again, if you are going to go for like a really aggressive approach, sure, you might take out like one player at a time, but it's going to take a lot of resources to do so. And yeah, you might just get kind of taken out after you kind of blow all your cards, essentially. So there you go. Next up, Aelia, Viper, Whisperer, a 1/3 Gorgon Assassin with Death Touch for 2 mana in black. Whenever Aelia attacks, you may pay 1 in a Golgari. If you do, create a 1/1 Black Snake creature token with Death Touch. Pay 4 in a black until end of turn. Whenever 1 or more Gorgons and or snakes you control deal combat to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. So that is quite nice. Do keep in mind the way that that is worded, 1 or more. Meaning that basically, if you hit a player, you're only getting one of those triggers. You're not getting like, oh, okay, I hit you with 3 creatures, you lose half your life, then half your life, then half your life. You can obviously make all players lose half their life if you hit all 3 of them, though, and that can be quite good. It is, I mean, I'm not going to say 2 mana intensive for that ability. That's a very powerful ability. You are very, I mean, obviously you can utilize changelings, but you are very kind of pigeonholed into going for 2 tribes that aren't the best supported necessarily, again, with snakes as well as Gorgons. Definitely Gorgons not being all that supported. This does give you a way to actually make them, obviously, which is nice, and they are not evasive, but the block deterrent, I would say, with that Death Touch. I think overall, again, you got access to 2 colors. Oh, goodness. I mean, this one counts too. It's pretty mana intensive, but you are in green. I'm leaning like, oh goodness, it's either like, it's either C or B. Probably, let's go with B, because there are ways to obviously take advantage of opponents losing a massive amount of life. Ways to double up life loss as well, so you could do like, not a combo necessarily, but kind of a combo where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, oh gosh, what's the one? Wound Reflection, there you go, like something like that, where at the end of the turn, an opponent loses life, equal amount of life they already lost. So again, they lose half, they lose the other half, they lose. There you go. So I'm going to go with a B tier commander. Next up, and again, my apologies for mispronouncing any of the names, Bragone? Bragoni? Bragone. Let's just go with Bragone. Soldier of Melitus, a 2/2 human soldier with vigilance for 2 mana in white. Whenever you cast a spell that targets it, put a +1 counter on it. Tap, remove a counter from it, draw a card. There are definitely worse mono white commanders out there, but this one's not all that impressive for the most part. Though it does have more potential than others. Okay. Here's the thing. Okay. Heroic is nice because you definitely can utilize cards that you normally wouldn't utilize, and you do get a benefit. The benefit isn't all that big. Like, it is a good benefit, obviously, getting a single counter on it. There are more effective ways to get more counters on this in mono white. So I'd be utilizing a lot of other ways to get counters on it, of course. Tap to put a counter on it and draw a card. Yeah, I mean, or put a counter on it, move a counter from it. If it was put a counter on, it'd be much better than that. Yes, you can actually get a good amount of card selection with this, especially a good amount of untap effects overall. Oh, goodness. I mean, okay, counter synergies, maybe some proliferate if you have that, as well as some untap effects to draw, kind of just make this into your draw engine. Mass untap effects, you have a decent amount of those in white. So, yeah, you could go that direction. We have a bunch of mana dorks in play or whatnot, and then you just untap everything, draw some more cards, find another giant untap spell. Once you get things set up, it's going to take a while to set up, though. You really can get things going. You are limited to, again, and some people fight back against this, and that's completely fine, and having different opinion on it. But I do think still, like, mono white is the weakest typically when it comes to, just all the colors. Mono red's right around there, too. The three other colors are just above those two. So I do think that this is just on the lower end of things, not to the lowest end, though. It's definitely not the lowest end. I'd say it's around, like, Kellen level, though. It's probably around Kellen level. Okay, we're going to go with that. Next up, IVora Intestine Air, a 1/1 vampire warrior with trample that costs 2 mana in red. Whenever it enters and whenever it deals combat to a player, create a blood token. Whenever you discard a card, put a counter on it. Okay, here's the thing. I mean, it is blood tokens are just okay for the most part. Like, they're probably on the weaker end of tokens for the most part. I mean, like, food, no offense, food, but yeah. Okay. Blood tokens, I wouldn't really count too much on just like, oh, I'm going to make a ton of blood tokens. That's going to be great. Like, okay, cool. You're rummaging. Good for you. I mean, the most powerful version of this is probably just utilizing wheels, really. Like, just as many wheels as you can find. Just draw, 7 cards. Discard your hand, which was probably, 6 or 7 cards once you get things going. And you keep getting more and more counters on this. I would maybe have some instant speed ways to discard cards as well, so you can do some combat trick kind of stuff with it, too. Overall, though, like, a trampling commander where you're just like really counting on like, okay, I'm gonna swing through and hit you with my commander. Yeah, in mono red with like, all wheels. It's a very interesting balance, but I think it's one of the weaker commanders, and I reserve the right to change this, but right now I am gonna throw this down into the D tier. It's probably like D plus, C minus, and I might regret putting it in the D tier because there's probably other ones that I'm forgetting that are, again, I don't have a list off to the side right now, that are much worse than this, but yeah. We're going to go with that. All right, Tiny Bones Bobble Burglar. Now, this is one where, okay, this is the type of commander where, again, its most optimal build is going to be probably more powerful than I'm going to give it credit for because, again, I'm going to hamper it just a little bit in saying that the vast majority of casual groups out there might not be okay with the vast, the perfect build around it, I would say, okay? It's a 1/3 skeleton rogue for 2 mana in black. Whenever an opponent discards a card, exile it from their graveyard and put a stash counter on it. During your turn, you may play cards you don't own with stash counters on them from exile, and mana of any type can be spent to cast spells. We need a term for that, Wizards. Just find a term for that instead of saying it every single time. 4 mana, essentially tap. Each opponent discards a card, activate only as a sorcery. Basically, you are incentivized to have opponents discard cards here, there, and everywhere, and there are certain playgroups that are completely fine with. There are other playgroups that are not completely fine with that. That's kind of the commander where if you're at your LGS, you kind of need to ask ahead of time if players are okay with playing against a heavy discard deck, because literally that's what you want to do with this. You just want to ramp, and you want to make players discard all of their cards, literally not have a hand, and they are top decking. Even if you don't have a hand yourself, it doesn't matter because you've got their cards stashed away and you can utilize those. So yeah, there are, of course, more effective ways to make opponents discard cards than this ability itself. It's not a bad ability to tap and make each player discard a card for 4 mana. That's not bad at all because you're like kind of siphoning mind a little bit where it's like, all right, you will discard a card. I kind of like draw 3 in a way because those are my cards now. It's effective. It's a very effective commander. Again, once you get things going, if you can just make your opponent's top deck, you're probably just going to win. Again, it depends on the play group. So I think overall, I'm probably just going to hedge my bets right here. And I'm just going to throw this in the middle. It's a B tier commander because, again, it is brutal card advantage when you are giving opponents card disadvantage. It's just, again, like how brutal can you make it and still play it in a casual setting with just a generic, commander play group out there, general play group out there. Again, this type of commander, just ask ahead of time, okay? Just ask. There are plenty of player groups I'm sure that are okay with it. There are other player groups that might not be okay with it, or people at the LGS, etc. Next up, Ernan Damoka, warrior, a 1/1 human warrior for 2 mana in white. Whenever it enters, put a counter target creature. Whenever you attack, targeting attack creature with a counter on it gains first strike until end of turn. That creature has 2 or more counters on it, gains double strike instead. Okay, I mean, this is basically like, I mean, you could go wide with like +1 counters on creatures, sure, but like it's really not that impactful. I mean, the most powerful build around this is probably just like, okay, it's a 2/2 that gets double strike quite easily. So you can just like go really quick to try to Voltron out players is probably the direction you're going to go with this, because that's probably the quickest way to do it. Can you take opponents out decently quickly if you get, the right hand and you're set properly? Probably, but like you're, again, like kind of like what I talked about earlier with another commander where, yeah, sure, you might take out one, but then the other player's going to be like, okay, we stopped you. And then you're like, okay, I'm out of resources. Oh no, I've got to rebuild my little commander. It's going to take time. I think overall, again, it's a limited amount of white D tier commander. Moving on. Zulshore, Lich Lord, a 2/2 zombie warlock for 2 mana in black. Ward, pay 2 life. Tap, you may cast target zombie creature card from your graveyard this turn. This, again, when it comes to like tribal commanders, one thing you do have to obviously consider is literally what tribe is it in and how much support does that tribe have. You're going to have a lot more support, obviously, in zombies, which is one of the most popular and supported tribes out there, than, say, Starfish, if there was a Starfish commander. Anyways, so this is a commander that is low to the ground. It is not too hard to deal with. Again, it is pay 2 life, not 2 mana. If it was 2 mana, that would be more difficult. In Commander, you're much more willing to be like, yeah, 2 life, that's 1/20th of my life total. Sure, I'll take out your commander. It's still annoying, but it is not something that's actually going to deter an opponent when they're like, I have to take that out. I will take that out. Versus like mana when it's like, I can't actually pay to take that out. That being said, being able to cast zombie creature cards from your graveyard, that is pretty big. Again, because you are obviously in a color that's really good at getting things in the graveyard, whether that is entombing them, like just tutoring them into your graveyard directly, or milling, etc., etc. Or I guess discarding too. But still, being able to cast zombies out of your graveyard can be a very powerful thing. Essentially, your most problematic zombies you can keep getting out again and again and again and again. Gary, I believe, is a zombie, right? Essentially. But yeah, those kind of things where you can just like, okay, yeah, Gary, ETB. Or like other great ETBs, LTBs you can keep using and abusing with sacrifice outlets too. It's pretty powerful. Is it the most powerful zombie commander of all time or the most powerful commander in this set? Set/Jumpstart thing? No, but I do think it's a good middle-of-the-road commander. Again, zombies are a well-supported tribe. You can do a lot of powerful things with this one. I mean, maybe some broken things too, but yeah, you don't really have access to Intruder Alarm. If you did, you definitely could, but you don't have access to Intruder Alarm in this color, though there's probably some weird convoluted combo I'm forgetting right now. But yeah, it's a pretty powerful, again, tribe, pretty powerful effect for a commander for that tribe. Next up, Alesia, who laughs at fate, a 2/2 human warrior with first strike for 3 mana in Rakdos. Whenever Alesia attacks, put a counter on it. Rated at the beginning of your end step. If you attack this turn, return target creature card with mana value less than or equal to Alesia's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. Here's the thing that makes commanders like this more powerful than commanders that actually have like the attack trigger dependent on them attacking themselves. Yeah, you don't have to send Alesia into danger if you don't want to. Now, it is beneficial for you to attack with Alesia, obviously. Again, Alesia has first strike, so that's a good way to protect, essentially, but not perfect protection, unless you grant Death Touch, which is usually a great way to do that. So yeah, I would definitely give this commander Death Touch, and it's not a perfect way to protect either, but if an opponent doesn't have enough blockers, they're not going to be able to stop you anyways, or if they're not willing to sacrifice all those blockers to Death Touch first striker, regardless, attacking gets counters on it. You got other ways to pump as well. Just like chuck a Black Later Forge on this, and you're probably going to be able to get whatever creatures out of your graveyard you want to be able to get out, which is great. That being said, even just at a base level as a 2/2, you can cheat out some incredible things like, Master of Cruelties, etc., etc., etc. And yeah, just be able to utilize really high power creatures. Also, again, you've got access to great wheels in red. You've got access to, again, great entomb effects in black. You can get the right creatures in your graveyard, do some very powerful things. I think overall, it's a very solid commander, again, with a great end step trigger. You've got ways to double up that trigger as well, or ways to use and abuse it with maybe like some reanimation effects, like a creature that enters that reanimates something else and does this other thing. You know, we have a lot of cool things with this. I think overall, it's a pretty solid commander. I do think it is probably slightly ahead of those in the B tier. I mean, definitely the one I most recently placed. So, yeah, Probably an A tier commander. Again, Tiny Bones probably, I mean, again, just depending on how you build around that one, depending on how casual you're making it, that one could be, again, argued between these two, but yeah, it's a solid commander. Next up, Inept Vizier of Hazaret, a 4/2 Jack of Warrior Trample for 3 mana in red. You may exert it as it attacks. When you do, exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn and play those cards. Now I feel bad for putting any other commanders in the D tier, because this is definitely a D tier commander, and I don't know if there's really any arguing against that. Though, you know, again, we've got other commanders to talk about too. This is a commander where literally you need to send your commander into danger. You literally have to send your commander into danger and say, I'm not going to untap you for another turn, and then I get access to 2 cards. Cool. The Impulse Draw 2. Great. I mean, yes, it's temporary card advantage, but again, you probably will lose your commander unless you've got a way to get through. Just a 4/2. Sure, it's got trample, whatever. But yeah, you got to send your commander into danger. And yes, I know. And I've seen comments before on this, and I understand it completely, that not every legendary creature is made specifically for commander. I completely understand that. That being said, to be fair and evaluate all these on the same playing field, I am considering them as if they are a commander. So there you go. So yes, if you're building a deck around this one, it's quite weak. Next up, Robo, the first Fang, a 2/2 cat avatar for 3 mana in white. Other cats you control at ++1. Whenever another cat you control enters, create a 1/1 white cat creature token. This is quite powerful. Cats are actually becoming a more and more supported tribe overall. Goodness, and it's got a good pump effect too. You are obviously in mono white, so again, that is a limitation. You do have access to, a good amount of the cats. I mean, most of the cats are in like white-green-ish typically, but yeah, probably mostly white. Or, I mean, a little bit of red too. Regardless, being able to pump your cats is nice, but more importantly, again, any of your cats come into play, you get an extra one. It's kind of like a Ren and Siri, but for just, cats, essentially. Everything is a cat. That being said, you obviously have access to some mass blink effects as well. I mean, general blink effects too, just like Cloud Shift, but yeah, like a mass blink effect like Eerie Interlude. You get a bunch of cats in play, you blink them, congratulations, you just double up your army. You also have a token doubler in this color as well. You've got ways to double up on ETBs as well. There are definitely powerful things that you can do with this one. I'd say overall, I mean, it's like a B+, A-. Oh, goodness gracious. Like, cats are less supported than zombies, but I do think this one's a more powerful effect than the zombie one, though this is mono white versus mono black. Maybe I'm overestimating this one. I'm gonna move down to the B tier. We've got a lot of really powerful commanders in this, and oh gosh, okay, maybe it's right around there, okay? I mean, I reserve the right to move it. Right now I'm putting the B tier, but it's like a B+, A-, okay? Next up, Cleon, Merry Champion, a 2/2 human soldier for 3 mana in red. Double strike. Whenever you cast a spell, it targets it. Exile top card of your library, play that card until the end of your next turn. I mean, it's a decent commander. It's kind of like a one-punch man style commander where you're going to be like, okay, I target it. Hopefully I wiped out an opponent, but also hopefully I got some things off the top of my library that I can play next turn to wipe out the next opponent, essentially. Or maybe generate a little bit of card advantage, or maybe like get a wheel so I can reset things, essentially. So it is kind of like Feather / One Punch Man-ish, but also limited to mono red in a pretty risky, just like going all in, trying to take you out quickly, and if it fails, and if I don't hit right things off the top library, I might not have any actual fuel for the fire next turn, essentially. So overall, like, it's not the worst. I don't think it's quite bottom of the barrel like the other ones are. Again, it is giving you like temporary card advantage. Oh, we're going to go with the C tier, actually, okay? It's a C tier commander, in my opinion. It is not as bad as those D tier commanders. Next up, Everth Viceroy of Plunder, a 2/2 vampire soldier with flying for 3 mana in black, but it is a Rakdos commander. So, sacrifice another creature or artifact, put a counter on Everth Viceroy of Plunder. If the sacrifice permanent was a treasure, gains lifelink until turn, activate only as a sorcery. That is a huge line of text right there. Whenever it dies, you may pay Rakdos colors. When you do, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. That is quite nice. Problem is that is, again, a sorcery activation, so kind of there's no just like, oh, okay, someone's going to wipe the board, cool, I'll sacrifice everything, and then, yeah, take you all out with that. You really kind of have to show what direction you're going with this, essentially, on your turn, and, like, make those calls to sacrifice things on your turn or not. It's nice that it gives you a lifelink. Cool, if you sacrifice treasures, great, but I mean, I don't know if that's enough. I would rather just have that not be a thing at all and like take off the activate only the sorcery. Just literally take that off. The fact that it's on there is a bit problematic. I mean, obviously you could get a bunch of things in, sacrifice on your turn, maybe give this double strike. You are in red, fly through, take out an opponent. Cool. I mean, I think with that limitation, though, sorcery speed, it really does hamper it. I mean, obviously the most powerful build around this is like, okay, let's go with aristocrat style. But again, because of the limitation of when you can sacrifice, you are really limited in your approach, and you do have to kind of go all in, and you might have to pay for that. Like, you might just get got a little bit by opponents when you try to do that. So yeah, because you can't sacrifice at instant speed, again, literally, you might just be like, okay, I sacrifice this artifact, and then the opponent's like, okay, I respond, your commander's gone before you start sacrificing all the things. Anyways. Or yeah, I exile your commander instead, so there you go. Yeah, I think overall I'll probably put this one, and maybe I'm underrating it, but I'll put this one in the C tier because of that sorcery speed limitation. But again, I am a bit harsher on commanders when it comes to a big sorcery speed limitation. Next up, General Create? I don't know how to say that. The Boltbringer, I know how to say that. 2/2 Goblin Soldier for 3 mana in red. Whenever one or more goblins you control attack, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. When another creature you control enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Yeah, I mean, so this is basically like an impact tremors as a commander that incentivizes you to get a lot of goblins in play. Goblins have a lot of support. Again, kind of like zombies, one of the most supported tribes out there. Ooh, okay. I mean, the benefit, again, for just going goblins is, and again, you don't really have to because you could just keep attacking with this, obviously, but you don't want to send your commander to danger, really, unless you got ways to get it through. But yeah, goblins are a good tribe to just really go wide in, which is what you want to do. You can also utilize, of course, damage doublers, damage triplers. You can use lifelink on this as well to gain a ton of life too, so do keep that in mind. There's better goblin commanders out there, but yeah, like obviously Kranko works great in this deck, Mob Boss. Yeah, I think overall, again, because of the amount of goblin support there is, and this could go pretty quickly, again, if you get a lot of creatures in play, I'd say overall this is probably like a middle-of-the-road B-tier commander. Maybe I'm overestimating it, but that's what I think. All right, next up, Gornog the Red Reaper, a 2/3 Minotaur Warrior with haste that costs 3 mana in red. Cowards can't block warriors. Whenever one or more warriors you control attack a player, target creature that player controls becomes a coward. Attacking warriors you control a +X/+0, X number of cowards your opponents control. Okay, so being able to basically say, like, each of your opponent's creatures is a coward, or not each, but one of each of opponent's creatures is a coward, that can obviously give you, your creatures +3/+0 on attack, essentially. All your warriors, you are specifically limited to warriors, which, again, is like a supported but non-supported tribe. It's one of those weird ones where, again, it's like trying to remember what's a warrior versus what's a soldier versus what's a knight is very tough. And being like, oh, yeah, oh, wait, that was a warrior. Okay, that one's a warrior. That one's a warrior. You do have some support, but it's not like elves. It's not like goblins. It's not like dragons or zombies, okay? So you do have some support. And if you do have some ways, I guess, to, I mean, there's only really one way to, like, actually, like, make your opponent's creatures into cowards. I mean, this is attack. There's a couple, but there's not like a, hey, all your creatures gain, opponent's creatures gain changeling in this color. Okay. Yeah, overall, although if your opponents have changelings, that's definitely a limiting factor to them. Maybe I'm underselling it. Oh man, maybe I'm underselling it and I'm forgetting just like how many great warriors are out there. They're definitely a good amount, but again, you are limited to mono red, so your pool is a little more limited. I'm gonna say because of limitation, you're at a C tier. Okay, I'm sorry, you're cool design, but I'm sorry. All right. Herska Sweet Tooth, a 3/3 bear for 3 mana in green, but it's a Selesnya commander. Whenever it attacks, create a food token. Whenever you gain life, you may pay a Selesnya mana. When you do, target creature gets +X/+X to have X amount of life you gained. I have messed up on this one, my apologies. When I think I initially talked about it, basically I was saying like, yeah, like gain this turn was basically what I was thinking. It is not. It's just initially gain that. So the problem, there are definitely instant speed great ways that you can combat trick. There's a lot of great ways to do that. There are certain other ones that are really great too, but it's going to be sorcery speed, so you're kind of, again, like showing your hand on what you're going to be doing. Like, you're like, okay, like I'm swinging through this creature, and unless that creature has evasion, you're not going to get the blocks that you want. I mean, they're going to block the big creature. If it doesn't have trample or evasion, then you're not getting through. That being said, obviously, you give this evasion. If you've got a bunch of like low-to-the-ground flying men kind of type creatures, and you've got a lot in these colors, especially in white, then great. You can get through an opponent's and kind of like utilize like a life doubler or like a congregate effect where like, all right, I gain an absurd amount of life, hit you for just one giant amount, and you're gone. You also have ways to take advantage of the life gain too. Okay, I mean, I do think, here's the thing, really, like, if this did say we're X the amount of life you gained this turn, I would say that this is probably an A tier commander, and maybe I'm overvaluing that, but like, there's a lot of ways to gain a lot of life very easily, very quickly. Whereas this one's like, okay, you gain life, you gotta pay it like right then and there. Or if you gain, say like, okay, I doubled my life total with a card, but now I need to like attack and get through, and then you have to like gain life again just to, I mean, see again, like you're only gaining 3 then, like you need to have that creature actually be evasive ahead of time, and you have to actually have an opponent not take them out ahead of time, versus like, okay, I swing with all these, figure out what you're doing, blocks, one gets through, and then I pump that one. So yeah, I think overall, because, okay, if it was just the total life you gain in that turn, I do think it'd be probably A. I'm going to go with a B tier commander, though, okay? There are some limitations to it, but there are very powerful things you can do with it, too. You can take out with commander damage if you get some evasion quite easily. Again, it's very easy to gain 20 life. I mean, 18 life is what you need, right? Very easy to gain 18 life with the right strategy. Just even single cards can do it. And, yeah, I'm going to go with that. Okay, we're going to go with that. All right, Kiora, the Rising Tide. We've got a 3/2 Merfolk Noble for 3 mana in blue. Enters, draw 2, discard 2, threshold. Whenever Kiora attacks, if there are 7 more cards in your graveyard, may create Sign of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token. Now, unfortunately, that is legendary, and you have to send Kiora into danger to do so and make that. That being said, yes, there are certain strategies you could utilize around this, like Mirror Box, you know, basically making legendary rule not matter for you, and then saying, hey, I've got a bunch of giant 8/8s. And that is a good approach, but it's also kind of an all-in approach where, yeah, if you're like, okay, cool, I've got my army of 8 8/8s and I'm doing great. I mean, 8 would be a lot. You'd probably already won the game at that point. Let's just say 4 even. If someone just, like, bounced your Mirror Box, you're like, oh, all that work, gone. I more so would probably build around, like, it's a nice addition to get that 8/8. I more so would build around blinking this quite a bit, getting it, you know, as a good ETB to basically loot 2, essentially, draw 2, discard 2, and then have advantages off of, have some triggers off of when I discard cards, when I draw cards, utilize that to my advantage, use a lot of blink effects. You got a lot of great blink effects in this, repeatable ones, as well as one-off ones, and of course, yeah, utilizing even better ETBs when you have them as well. So yeah, I think overall, Kiora the Rising Tide, it's not a bad commander at all. It's probably, it's not a over-the-top commander, though, I don't think. I'm going to go with a C tier commander. I do think it's got potential, but it's just not quite there. Next up, Loot Exuberant Explorer. Okay, green gets all the good things, right? That's kind of the argument, right? A 1/4 Beast Noble for 3 mana in green. You may play additional land each of your turns by paying 6 mana in total and tapping. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You reveal a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control from among them and put on the battlefield with the rest of the bottom of your library in a random order. So, yeah, a low to the ground commander that gives you additional land drops. Land drops obviously are very good in Commander because land is a protected resource for the most part for most casual playgroups out there, and it is protected ramp. Your opponents will not stop you from ramping when it comes to lands. That's just kind of the deal in casual Commander for the most part. So because of that, I mean, you're going at hyper speed getting things down, and there is that limitation again, like, okay, reveal the top 6. Like, oh, I can't just like get an Eldrazi out right away. That's like 11 mana. But it can happen quite quickly because, again, on top of this letting you play additional lands, there's other cards that let you play additional lands. There's other cards that ramp with lands, obviously. So, yeah, you're going to get a lot of lands quite quickly. And, again, 6 mana might seem like a good amount, but really not at all for a commander that ramps you. And I mean, on the episode, I highlighted this when I was talking about literally like, okay, how can we just untap this and activate it twice in a turn? This one also would be worse if it had an activate only at sorcery speed. Wizards just seems to be willy-nilly sometimes on when they put that on things and when they don't. This is one that, it could be argued, could use that, you know, potentially if they're like, well, we want it to be more casual and we want it to, you know, not be like a, gotcha kind of card, like, you know, the vampire one we talked about earlier. This one's like, you can definitely do a gotcha kind of thing where you're like, okay, opponent attacks me, cool, top 6, and big creature to block, yours is gone. So it's going to be really tough for your opponents to swing into you if you're doing that. That being said, yeah, you can cheat out some massive things quite quickly, get a lot of value out of this, and you are getting extra lands into play, which is already powerful. Use some landfall synergies with that too. Do a lot of powerful things with this. You have some untap effects as well. Take advantage of it again. I'm going to go with an A tier commander overall. Moving on. Near Div? Devious Diver, is that the name? Near Div? A 2/2 Merfolk Rogue for 3 mana in blue. Becomes tapped, target player mills cards equal to its power. Whenever you cast a spell from your graveyard or activate ability of a card in your graveyard, draw a card and put a counter on Near Div. Okay, so this one, again, it becomes tapped. Attacking obviously does that. There's obviously other ways, though, that you can tap and untap this, which would be a bit more beneficial when it comes to milling quicker. And yes, obviously getting counters from the other trigger is nice, but you might not want to counter on that as like the only way to get counters on this or to increase its power to help you mill. So obviously, utilizing this kind of as a mill engine, a self-mill engine, is probably going to be the most beneficial way to do that. So you can get things in your graveyard, so you can activate abilities of things in your graveyard or cast things out of your graveyard, flashback type cards. And obviously, it's a draw engine too for you too, once you are doing so. Basically, like whenever you're flashing back a card, cool, you draw a card. That's quite nice. Whenever you activate an ability out of your graveyard, that's also quite nice. So there's some really cool things you can do this. You are limited to mono blue. If this was like in Dimir, it would probably be a step above where I'm going to be placing it. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's overly good though. I mean, but I don't think it's even, oh goodness. Like, I don't think it's even like middle tier, maybe even though. Maybe it's middle tier. Maybe it's middle tier, because like, yeah, it is like just straight up card advantage. Oh my gosh, I'm going back and forth on this one. This is tough, because again, there is a good amount of graveyard synergy, flashback cards, but you're limited mono blue. It's like a C+, B-. My gut says C+. We're gonna go with C+ right now. I am sorry, Near Div. Devious Diver next up. Ozox, the Clattering King, a 3/2 Skeleton Noble for 3 mana in black. It can't block. When it dies, create Jumble Bones, a legendary 2/1 black skeleton creature token. With this creature can't block, and when this creature leaves the battlefield, return target card named Ozox, the Clattering King, from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, this is a commander where it's like 2+ bodies in one. Like, you get a good amount of creature fodder with just this, literally. Again, you play it, you sacrifice it. You get another thing, you sacrifice that, you get this thing back to your hand from your graveyard. You can keep that pattern going and going and going as long as you get the mana to do so. Obviously, there's certain like combos that you could run with it potentially, where you literally could just, what's the one that makes your creatures cost 2 less but gives them -1/-1? Yeah, that could be a way to do it. Where you're just like, okay, cool, yeah, basically I have that in play. It's an enchantment. I can't remember the name of it. I can picture the artwork, but I can't remember the name. Someone in the comments below, please. It's 1 in a black. Okay, anyways. This is like one where, okay, it suddenly costs like a single black mana, and you can just keep churning this again and 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 again for a single black mana. Or obviously with like Phyrexian Altar, like there you go. Okay, cool. I mean, even without that, if you've got, or sorry, not Phyrexian. Yeah, Phyrexian. If you have Phyrexian plus Ashnod's Altar, this is just infinite cast. So I guess if you are going more combo route, this one does have a good amount of potential. Like, it is just creature fodder. Oh, it is hard to deal with, obviously, but like your win condition would be probably I combo and I take you out like a Blood Artist in play. Again, I think I'm just going to kind of hedge my bets with this one, where like kind of like Tiny Bones, where certain playgroups are okay with that, certain playgroups are not okay with that. This, obviously, you're in black, you have a bunch of tutors, so it just really depends. So I'm probably going to just hedge my bets and put this in the B tier. I'll just put it right next to Tiny Bones, actually, there to emphasize the point. There you go. I'll put these two first in the B tier, just to emphasize that point that, like, hey, if you're building in that direction, which is the most powerful build direction for it, most likely, sure. Like, you know, infinitely cast your commander can be a very powerful thing, but again, what kind of playgroups want to play against that? It just depends. Moving on. Plagon, Lord of the Beach, a 0/3 Starfish Wizard for 3 mana in blue. When it enters, draw a card for each creature control with toughness greater than its power. Pay and Azorius mana. Target creature control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness around its power this turn. Okay, so this is like, I mean, Defender, Tribal-ish, but not quite Defender, because this one doesn't give your defenders the abilities to attack, like kind of like Arcades the Strategist does. Like, you can't actually just attack with your, you know, defenders. You need just creatures that straight up have greater toughness than power, essentially. And there are a good amount of those out there, and some really powerful ones out there. That being said, this is a giant card draw engine for you. Again, it's ETB without a cast restriction. It's not like ETB if you cast it. No, just straight up ETB. So get a bunch of creatures in play that have toughness greater than power, and then all of a sudden blink it. Again, you're in Azorius, which are the two best colors when it comes to blinking and using and abusing ETBs. So just do that again and again and again and again and again. If I was building around this, I'd probably just be like, yeah, okay, a bunch of creatures with toughness greater than power. There's a lot of good ones out there. One, so you can be a very like defensive deck while you just utilize this as a card draw engine. and then win in ways that like benefit you from having a giant hand, or win in ways that benefit you from again, essentially drawing a bunch of cards, like Psychosis Crawler, potentially. Like, okay, cool, I drew 10 cards. All right, I blink it, I drew 10 more cards. Okay, etc., etc., etc. So I do think this one does have a decent amount of potential. Maybe I undersold it a little bit when I first talked about it, but like, it's a lot of card draw potential in two colors that can, again, use and abuse it quite easy with that blink effect, and also, like, ETB doubling. I'm just going to go with A, B tier. You are limited to the kind of creatures that you really can, like, utilize in the deck. There's still a decent amount of creatures, though, that have toughness greater than power. And again, even if you're not, like, focusing heavily on combat and being like, okay, like, it assigns combat damage equal to toughness. Great, cool. Like, that might not matter all that much. Or it might matter early game, but, like, later game, again, you're choosing as a defensive approach and just utilizing a massive hand and blink effects and other crazy things to really do some cool things. Okay, next up. Semilla? I'm not sure how to say that. Malian Poet. I don't know. I've said poet. Okay. Malian Poet? I don't know these names. 1/1 human bard for 3 mana and white. Whenever you cast your first enchantment spell, you turn, create a 2/2 white nymph creature, enchantment creature token. Beginning of each combat, if you control 5 more enchantments, gets +4/+4 and gains lifelink until end of turn. Okay, so this one is, I'm gonna spoil it right away. It is a D tier commander in my opinion. This is one that would not be all that bad, and I kind of went back on that a little bit, like as a card in the 99 of an Enchantress deck, because it is giving you an enchantment basically every single turn when you are casting those. Like, that is nice. Again, a 2/2 enchantment, it makes that whenever you're casting enchantments. Making more enchantments is a good thing for Enchantress decks. That being said, yeah, again, it is limited to just your turn, which typically, again, you're not casting enchantments on your opponent's turns, but it would be nice to have the option as well. Or if it's like ETB enchantments, then like, yeah, that'd be completely different. That being said, like, the play for this one is like, okay, I've got 5 or more enchantments. I'm a 5/5 with lifelink. Okay, that's not really all that impressive. I mean, we've got Sarah Ascendant in the format, which is a 6/6 flyer with lifelink on turn 1. So, yeah, it's just like, okay, what are you doing with this one? Like, Enchantress? Sure, but like mono white Enchantress with like a little bit of a benefit. And again, it's making enchantment creature tokens, which are easier to deal with from your opponent's standpoint. We're like, oh yeah, I cast a Wrath. Oh no, all my enchantments are gone because they're also creatures. So yeah, overall, D tier. Next up, Shrufus Sproutsire, if I could say that right. Hard name to say. 1/1 sapling with trample for 3 mana in green. Whenever a sapling you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green sapling creature tokens. This is one that kind of like can like Scoot Swarm it. I mean, not Scoot Swarm. Scoot Swarm's different, obviously, and just how it goes about things, but like this is like exponential growth. Again, you literally just hit an opponent with this. Again, you're going to pump it up. Let's say you've got like, what's the, Raised by Giants or whatever in play. It's a 10/10. Cool. All right, you swing through, you got trample. You hit an opponent, let's say, for 8. Whatever, you make 8 saplings. Now, next time you swing through, you hit with this again. Maybe you hit with some of those saplings. The saplings also make you more creatures. Anthems are absurd with this commander in their effectiveness. Because essentially, let's say you just have a simple, like, what is it, Gaia's Anthem in play, +1 to all your creatures. Let's say you've got 10 saplings in play, and they all hit for 2 now. You hit all, let's say they all get through. You have Bellowing Tangleworm or something in play that helps them get through. Cool. You do so. You hit all your opponents. You make 20 saplings now. But all of those get +1/+1 as well. So then if those hit, you'd get +40 saplings. So again, the exponential growth of this one is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. It's pretty low to the ground. Again, it has trample, so you don't have to worry about, again, like, finding ways to really get it through. You just pump it. You just pump it. I mean, also you can have other ways to get it through too, like I mentioned with like Bellowing Tangleworm. Give them all Intimidate. Cool. But yeah, being able to build up an army super quickly with this can be quite crazy. Yes, you're in a monocolor, but green is one of the better monocolors out there, I would say. Yeah, maybe I'm overestimating this one compared to other ones, but yeah, I'm going to go with an A tier commander. This one, again, just like plus going wide with saplings, which you do have a good amount of sapling support, obviously, in green. It might be is it the only color that makes saplings? Like, I know, like, there's, like, 2 color cards that make saplings, too, but, like, is green, do those cards have to have green? Like, is green the only color that actually makes saplings? And don't say changeling cards, please, okay? Like, I understand changelings are a thing, but when I'm talking about this specifically, I believe saplings are only in green. I could be wrong. Okay, so, yeah, I think overall, pretty powerful. Once it gets going, it's going to be really tough to stop. You got to get it going, but once you get it going, it's like, oh my gosh. And again, literally, even if this gets stopped and you're like, okay, yeah, so I still have Gaia's Anthem in play, maybe Raised by Giants, whatever. Okay, you wipe the board, cool. All right, I play my Shrewfish Sproutsire, probably have a way to, give it haste, Lightning Greaves or whatever. I swing, okay, cool, I make 11 more. All right, next turn. swinging again, making 20 more. Like, you can just literally keep going and going and going and going and going. Okay, next up. Sutina, Speaker of the Tadru, a 2/2 Elf Scout for 3 mana in green. When it enters, search life for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. When it attacks, you may return a land card you control to its owner's hand. When you do, put a counter on target creature. Okay, so, the first part, and this is basically like a Farhaven Elf, essentially. Like, that's kind of what it just is. Like, it's a Farhaven Elf in the command zone, which is nice. There aren't really too many ways to use and abuse a Farhaven Elf in mono green. Like, if you were in blue or white, you can be like, yeah, cool, like, mass blink effects, repeat blink effects. Like, yeah, you got Conjurer's Closet, but sure. So you can only, like, get a limited amount of lands out of this. And, I mean, it's nice to have, like, guaranteed ramp in the command zone, but still, like, it's just one. On top of that, that attack trigger is very lackluster. Again, like, all right, I bounce land back to my hand. You get slightly larger. Yay, me! And, yeah, sure, you may have some lands that have some, like, ETBs. Like, you could have, like, the hideaway land. Like, cool, I gotta get some hideaway. Yeah, okay, good. Cards are few and far between. Again, like, my brain just went like, it's got to be a C just because it's mono green. Like, versus, like, the other colors, which are, if you see the D tier right now, like, red and white are in there. So, yes, I definitely have a bias against those. My apologies. But, like, that's just like, when you're thinking about monocolor, green is more supported. I mean, I think, okay, overall, just to be fair, just like the way it's designed, I do think it's probably a D tier commander. Like, it just is, it's not quite up to snuff compared to the C ones. Like, it's just not quite there. So, yeah, like, if you just literally had Farhaven Elf in the command zone, which is basically this, you can just ignore that second part, really. Like, if you just had Farhaven Elf in the command zone, like, it'd be a D tier commander. It just would. Like, sure, okay, I get, like, a land. Maybe I've got, like, a couple ways I can actually just keep using and abuse this, but, like, a lot more powerful things to do. Okay. We're going to go with that. And I'm not saying you should completely ignore that second part. There are definitely lands you want to bounce back to your hand. Landfall triggers help too, obviously, but still, like, you got a 2/2 commander you need to send into danger to bounce a land and get a counter. Whoop-de-doo. All right, Sinette Jelly Drover, a 2/2 human wizard for 4 mana in blue. Enters or dies, create a 1/1 blue jellyfish creature token with flying. Creature control flying, get +1/+1. I mean, again, like, the color dependent thing is quite interesting because if this one was in, I mean, you do have a lot of blink effects, obviously. You're probably not going to, really benefit from that death trigger too often. Like, you're not going to, like, build around the death trigger like you would if this was a, commander that also, if it was like a Dimir commander, you could, like, feign death type effects to make sure you keep getting it back again. ETB, yeah, you've got blink effects, of course. So you can get a lot of 1/1 jellyfish with flying. Awesome. You can also just go, like, flying tribal in general, like, and there's a good amount of low to the ground flyers that can be quite effective, or just like utility flyers that can be great too, like a slight pump effect. Oh, okay, it's above. Okay, it's above like the D tier. I'm gonna go with a C tier. That's just where my gut says right now. Yeah, it's like a flying tribal commander that gives you some support in some ways. So there you go. I mean, like, and like also, I guess if you like really lean heavily into blink, maybe consider flyers as well that have good ETBs too. Okay, next up, Dionis, Elvish Archdruid, a 3/3 Elf Druid for 4 mana in green. Elves you control have whenever this creature comes tapped during your turn, untap it, put a counter on it. This spell triggers only once each turn. Pretty sure I misread this one as well. My apologies on the episode. There was like 60 new cards that literally came out, and I was going through them like, oh my gosh, okay, this does this, and this is my evaluation. And I usually, read the cards quite properly, but sometimes I don't, and I miss that it says during your turn. That's a huge limitation on this card. Huge, massive limitation on this card. If this did not say that, you'd be like, okay, just chuck in all the Land of War Elves type cards, and literally with each trip on the table, tap it 4 times. And you just keep getting 4 counters on all your creatures. Doesn't matter if you're using it for mana or not, wouldn't matter. That being said, sure, you can tap it once on your turn, you get a counter. Congratulations. What do you want to do with that? So yeah, Elf Tribal, again, is quite supported. But at the end of the day, this commander's like, okay, yeah, you can use your elves to make mana and then also untap and they get slightly larger. So it does double up. It does double up the amount of mana you can get from your, mana dork elves on your turn. So that is something. It also kind of like gives your creatures like pseudo vigilance as well. So do keep that in mind. Okay, maybe I'm hating on it a bit too much again just because, like, I thought the potential was much higher. I thought the potential was higher because, again, like, if you could tap them on your opponent's turns and untap them, that's a lot better. Again, instants become basically free for you, and then also you just gain a lot of counters that you trip on the table. Versus this, just one. Elves is a very supported tribe, just because Elves is an incredibly supported tribe, and, the mana potential that you can make on your turn, I'm going to throw this in the B tier, okay? All right, I kind of went one way, then went another with it. We're going to end up in the B tier, middle of the road. Next up. Alenda, Saint of Dusk, a 4/4 Vampire Knight for 4 mana and Orzhov. Lifelink Hexer from Instance. As long as your life total is great, then your starting life total ++1. It has Menace. Alenda gets additional +5/+5 if your life total is at least 10 greater than your starting life total. Thank you for those of you who commented when I was asking. I was like, this reminds me of a card from a while ago. And I was like, it's a 5 mana vampire or whatever in Orzhov. And yeah, Blood Baron of Vizkopa, I believe, is the card. Correct. Thank you, everyone who commented. So this is like very similar to that one but this one is, I mean, again, as a commander, it is like Voltron. It's like life gain Voltron-ish. Like you want to make sure your life total is 10 or greater, and your opponents very much want to make sure it's not 10 or greater or 10 or greater, 20, or I can't talk. They want to make sure it's not 50 or above, is basically what I'm saying. So yeah, being a 10/10 lifelink Hexer from Instance, which you can get to pretty quickly, again, that extra 10 life in Commander, dropping this down and just having that as, hey, gets around most removal. I mean, target removal, right? Rasps will still get it, but like target removal for the most part are instant speed, so this will get around that. Yeah, if you got other ways to protect it, it can be hard to deal with. And yeah, like you can gain a ton of life with this as well to like keep your life total padded. Obviously, giving it double strike is huge, and if you give it double strike and just +1 teeny tiny extra power, it's a one-shot KO on anyone. You got to give it evasion. This is, it's interesting because it's like Voltron isn't quite a very powerful strategy typically, I will say. This one is protected Voltron in a way without a Hexer from Instance. And also, again, like, it is hitting really hard, really quick for the most part. Again, you can pretty easily get to 10 extra life by the time you get this commander out. So, maybe I'm overselling it, but there are some really cool life gain synergies you can do as well. And yeah, again, the fact that it become a one-shot KO super easily in colors that can get it through and give a double strike. Yeah, it's, I'm going to go with the B tier commander overall. Maybe I'm overestimating it compared to some of the C tiers. It's probably like a B- if I had to say, but we're going to go with a B. One that is definitely not a B in my opinion. Fumulus, the Infestation, a 2/2 vampire insect for 4 mana with flying and death touch. Whenever a player sacrifices a non-token creature, create a 1/1 black insect creature with flying. Whenever an insect, leech, slug, or a worm you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. Okay, maybe I'm overselling this one potentially, but yeah, it's up there. Like, this is very, very up there. Like, this to me, again, like, has combo potential for the playgroups that allow that. Again, hampering a little bit because, like, some playgroups aren't like, you know what? Hey, cool, yeah, okay, you got that. Even if you're not comboing, though, you literally just throw down, like, what is it? Dictate of Erebos, Grave Pact, that one giant vampire for 7 mana. Your opponents won't have any creatures in play ever again if you've got a free sacrifice outlet. You're just like, oh, okay, cool, huh? Yeah, all right, yeah, I make those, I sacrifice. Yeah, I make those, I sacrifice. I make those, I sacrifice. Because, yeah, you're not making, you know, insects when you're sacrificing, say, your insects, obviously, because that would just be an infinite combo right then and there. But if you sacrifice an insect and then you know, Grave Pact triggers and says all your opponents sacrifice a creature, they're going to be sacrificing all their creatures, including plenty of non-token ones. And for every single time you do that, typically you're going to make 3 insects because your opponents will sacrifice 1 non-token creature each. So all of a sudden, you are wiping out their boards again and again and again while making yourself a massive army that also drains your opponents when it attacks them. And also gives you a bunch of life. And of course, yeah, again, certain combos with like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. I get my, you know, resummoning skeleton out or whatever. I sacrifice it with my Phyrexian altar. I sacrifice my insect with my Phyrexian altar. I bring it back out. I sacrifice it again, etc., etc., etc. So this one does have combo potential. It's also just like very powerful because it incentivizes you to, again, edict again, and have repeat edict effects in play. Edict just meaning forcing sacrifice, essentially. So yeah, being able to, I think it's what, is that named after Chainer's Edict? Just history there for Magic. Anyways, being able to just flood the board with insects so quickly, and then again, just have like game-locking cards that if they're not dealt with, your opponents literally can't play creatures. Like, again, Grave Pact on the board plus Viseris here. Good luck to your opponents ever stopping you from just decimating their board and keeping it just completely gone. So yeah, having like those repeatable creature fodders, like, you know, resummoning skeleton types, some combo pieces in there as well, if that's allowed for your playgroup. And then also just, again, those game-locking pieces. I do think this one is kind of just a above, you know, the other ones in the A tier. I think that this is an S tier commander. I think it's one that, like, it definitely could be argued that it is not, and I understand that completely. And it's one that I think some players might underestimate, but like literally getting a creature for every single time a player sacrifices a non-token creature, you're going to be getting so much value, an absurd amount of value out of this. Like, obviously, there's going to be certain times where you're like, okay, I'm playing against an all-tokens deck, and I'm not getting any insects because I'm playing against an all-tokens deck. But most of the time, that's not going to be the case. And most of the time, you're like, yeah, I control your board. You have no creatures in play. You will never have any creatures in play. And all of a sudden, if you do get a creature in play, I just get value out of that. So yeah, you really, really got to stop the wheel from turning to stop this commander. Next up, Kaikar, Zephyr Awakener, a 3/4 bird wizard with flying for 4 mana. In Azorius, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose 1. Exile another target creature you control, return that card to the battlefield. Unresolved control to be an next end step. Create a 1/1 white spirit controller with flying. This is a powerful commander. This is one that is somewhat similar to previous Kaikar, but not quite to that level. Like, it traded out like the ritual type effect with that one, and also an extra color as well, which is impactful for basically like, hey, you also get a blink effect, technically. Now, because it is blink delay, and I know like some people say there's like blink and flicker, but those are sometimes interchanged. Basically, it's a delay blink effect, all right? The creature comes back at the beginning of extend step, meaning that it's not just usable and abusable like as if it came back right away like a Displacer Kitten. Yeah, this is powerful. Again, using and abusing ETBs, very powerful. It can be very difficult for your opponents to deal with like any of your creatures, essentially. Other creatures outside of this one, it has to be another creature you're blinking. But like, yeah, if they're like, okay, I target that, and you're like, no, I cast Opt, or any, kind of cantrip, like just out of nowhere. Oh, I cast that, blink that. Okay, it's gone until it needs to come back. So again, there is a benefit sometimes where like you can also avoid a lot of board wipes a lot of creatures because you can just blink a lot of creatures, essentially. And be like, yeah, come back later when things aren't as hairy. But yeah, you can't use and abuse like ETBs right away, which would be a bit more powerful in my opinion. Also, you can just make a bunch of spirits. Literally, you could just like grab every single like non-creature anthem essentially you can find in these colors and just chuck them in the deck, and you're probably gonna have an effective build because literally you're just like, okay, I cast an anthem. All right, I make a spirit with flying. I cast another one. I make another spirit with flying, and eventually you just have like 10 spirits that are 10/10s, and like you're like, all right, flying. I'm gonna swing out at you. So I'd say overall, it's a powerful commander. It's not quite top tier, but it is up there. I'm going to give it an A tier status, I believe. So we're going to go with the A tier for the brand new Kaikar. Next up, Nazar the Velvet Fang. And I forgot to mention this as well. I probably did, but make sure you comment below and let me know your thoughts are on these. I'd love to hear from you. I love the discussions that happen on these episodes, and I understand that, yeah, you've got a different perspective than I do, and you might think I'm very wrong on some of these, that I'm right on some of these. Would love to hear from you. Constructive criticism, please. Nazar the Velvet Fang, a 3/3 Vampire Warlock with Menace for 4 mana in black. Whenever you gain life, put a feeding counter on it. Whenever it attacks, you may remove 3 feeding counters from it. If you do, draw 3 cards, lose 3 life. Oh, okay, I mean, like, this is like a kind of like roundabout way of card advantage. Like, it's okay. Like, draw 3, lose 3. Like, that is nice. Like, draw 3, lose 3. Like, I don't care about, as long as I don't care how much life I'm losing. If it's 1 life per 1 card that I'm drawing, it could be draw 10, lose 10. It could be draw 1, lose 1. Whatever it is, sure, I'm down to pay that amount, okay? So draw 3, lose 3, that's nice. The lose 3, don't even worry about that at all, especially, again, when you want some life gain synergies in this deck, especially some repeat life gain synergies. It's whenever you gain life, not like for each life you gained. So basically, having repeat life gain synergies in this deck will allow you to get a lot of feeding counters on it. Obviously, proliferate can help too. It's only so much proliferate, when you're in mono colors typically though, but yeah, some have more than others. Regardless, you're going to want a way to get this through. It is an attack trigger, so you're literally dependent upon like, okay, I get my commander out, I get counters on it, and then I swing. Literally, if you like don't have any way to give it haste and ways to get counters on it quickly, this could get dealt with before you actually even get any value out of it. It's a good amount of card advantage, though, overall. And again, you do need to find ways to get through. Like, Menace is okay, but, like, not a guarantee to get through it at all. And again, you're sending your commander into danger if you're just like, hey, okay, hopefully that person doesn't double block. And maybe they will. Okay, overall, I think probably a C tier commander. We're going to go. It's not D tier. It's not as bad as some of the other ones, but it's not quite up there. Okay, Koala. I think that's how you say that, probably. A Johnny's Pride Mate. A 3/3 Cat Warrior for 4 mana in white. Whenever it attacks other 10 creatures you control, get +X/+0 until turn. X the number of counters on Koala. Whenever you gain life, put a counter on it. Pay 4 mana, you gain 1 life. Essentially 4 mana in total, 3 and a white. Okay, so you probably aren't going to be paying that very often. Like in desperation you can, or like as a combat trick you probably could. There's more effective ways to gain life, obviously. You're going to want to go really wide and gain a lot of life. But yeah, just having a bunch of like Soul Sister type effects in it could be really, really good because you're like, okay, a bunch of Soul Sisters in play. And that's basically, for those of you that don't know, okay, whenever a creature comes into play, you gain a life, like that kind of stuff. So make a bunch of tokens, and yeah, all of a sudden you've got an absurd amount of counters on this, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, I attack. Yay, my other creatures get gigantic and swing. Overall, like, it is not a bad strategy at all. This is one of those, like, uncommon commanders that, like, I think people might underestimate because it is uncommon. The amount that this can pump can be absurd. Like, absolutely absurd. Again, like, literally you Soul Sisters, like, have 2 of those in play maybe even, and then have, like, Secure the Waste, and you just made, like, 10 tokens, and then you just gained 20 life, you know, because you have 2 of them in play, and you just put 20 counters on this, making it into a one-shot KO, and then also pumping the rest of your team to oblivion. So yeah, it doesn't take much setup really at all. I mean, I guess in that example, that's a good amount of mana to put in to Secure the Waste. But of course, there's easier ways to make more creatures too more quickly. So yes, I would say this one is probably overall, like, your limited mono white. It's probably a B tier commander actually though. It is above pretty much all the ones I'm seeing in the C tier right now. Okay, moving on. Tithe Extractor, a 3/3 human rogue for 4 mana in black. Whenever you attack, target creature gains death touch on turn. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player you control, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat to a player, create a treasure token. They look at the top card of that player's library and exile it face down. You may cast the card for as long as it remains exiled. Basically, this is like Ragavan, but for multiple creatures. So again, whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat to a player, that means that you're only getting this trigger once per player. So you still can, you know, if you get through on 3 opponents, again, the Flying Men type strategy, some low the ground evasive creatures, you get through on each of your opponents, and sure, you can give 1 death touch or whatnot. It's like, okay, opponent might not block that. Awesome. Maybe they will. But yeah, I would have a bunch of low the ground evasive creatures, get through on them, and make basically 3 treasures each turn, and also each of your turns, and also get access to 3 cards each turn. You are dependent on having a board state to do this. You're dependent on getting things set up to do it and get through. I mean, and there are a decent amount of, like, again, low to the ground, like 1 mana, like, evasive creatures. Not, like, guaranteed evasion for the most part, though. There are some, like, you know, like, I get through it and can't block. Cool. Or I have shadow or whatnot. But, yes, there are certain amounts. I would probably go in that direction. Yeah, it's, like, decently powerful. Like, it's not A tier, but I think it's probably, like, middle of the road B. It can give you, again, temporary mana advantage with the treasures, and also, like, not temporary card advantage, but, like, advantage that is dependent on what your opponents have on top of their libraries and what you hit. So there you go. I'm gonna go with a B tier commander overall. Again, giving you mana, giving you slight evasion, I guess, of that death touch, and also giving you not evasion, but like deterrence, and also giving you that extra cards. Next up, Tycho the Patient Avalanche, a 4/5 Turtle Ninja Teenage Mutant for 4 mana in blue. It enters tapped. Oh, I'm slow. Whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it didn't die, Scry 1, put a counter on Tycho. Whenever it attacks, you may pay a Dimir. Whenever you do, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. Okay, so this is one where it's like, it's a very interesting commander. I don't know how good it is really, like, in the context of it takes a lot of pieces to really make it work. Yeah, I mean, like, the scrying is nice, like, that is card selection, and again, creature you control leaves the battlefield if it didn't die. That includes a lot of other things. Again, if creatures you control get exiled, if they get bounced back to your hand, if they get blinked, there you go. I mean, like, mass blink effect is probably the best way, but again, like, most of the mass blink effects are in white. You'd have access to a decent amount of blink effects, of course, in blue, yes. And of course, there are certain, you could just go combo with it. If you really want to go with that, then sure, you could get as many counters on you as you want, and then attack, it's unblockable. Overall, there's a lot of pieces moving for this one. There really are a lot of pieces moving for this one. And unless maybe I'm just missing something very obvious that works incredibly well with this, but like, it's a cool commander. Yeah, it's a lot of setup to basically, like, okay, I've got a commander that can swing and hit hard, haha, but I don't have ways to really give it double strike outside of, like, Fire Shrieker type cards. So, like, trying to, like, get it through and, like, hit, and yeah, there's just a lot of setup. I think overall, maybe I'm underselling it. Maybe I am underselling it, but I think overall, I think I'm gonna throw it in the C tier, actually. I don't think it's quite up to B tier, so I'm gonna go with that. Okay, maybe I'm missing something. Here we go. Third Mare of Destiny, a 2/4 Pegasus flying lifelink for 4 mana in white. Whenever you cast a Pegasus, Unicorn, or Horse creature spell, copy it. Other Pegasi, Unicorns, or Horses you control at ++1. These are tribes that, again, we talked about, like, earlier. We talked about zombies, cats, goblins. All those tribes are very supported. Elves, incredibly supported as well. These 3 tribes are not very supported. So hence why you can have a commander that's like, yeah, you know what? Double it. Like, you just get like twice the value out of it. There are certain creatures out there in mono white that are one of these creature types that are pretty powerful. Very powerful even. That just means that there's only so many of them out there, though. You are limited. You are getting an absurd effect again, literally doubling up a spell. But when you're doubling up, like, okay, I've got this, what is it, Opaline Unicorn? I've got Opaline Unicorn, and it can tap for mana. 1 mana. Yay! Like, there's only so much you can do with that. Like, just really. Like, there are something, like, what's the one, the Sunmare thing or whatever it is? The one that, like, makes 5/5s or whatever. It's indestructible, all those things. Obviously, there are very powerful things you can do with this. It's just, again, there are only so many good Pegasi, Unicorns, Horses out there, so yeah, and you're mono white. Overall, I mean, it's a really cool effect. It's just like you are limited to the tribe that you have, and yes, there's changelings too, but like I think overall it's probably C tier commander. My apologies. Next up, Zimone Paradox Sculptor, a 1/4 human wizard for 4 mana in Simic. Beginning of combat on your turn, put a counter on each of the 2 target creatures you control. Pay 2 mana in Simic. Tap double the number of each kind of counters on up to 2 target creatures and or artifacts you control. This is basically just Vorel the Hulkblade doubled. This is literally what this is. Like, Vorel the Hulkblade sure doesn't have the ability to put, or trigger to put counters on things. Okay, cool. Vorel doubles up one thing, though. That is creature, artifact, or land. Counters on it. This one does that. Doubles for 2 things, but it's creatures and or artifacts, no lands. It's kind of like more of the same of that. Like, counters are very supported. There's a lot of cool things you can do with this one. Simic is a well-supported, combination of colors as well. There's some powerful things there, too. It's not overly impressive in what it does. I think overall it's pretty middle of the road, actually. So I'm going to be throwing this one in the B tier. Moving on. Bralios of Ferris Band? Hopefully I'm saying that right. Star Centaur Scout for 5 mana in green. Power toughness each number of lands you control. Whenever it attacks, draw a card and put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. It's a pretty standard green commander. Like, what is green like? Big creatures. What is green also like? Lands. Cool, you got it. It does give you some card selection too, or not card selection, but card advantage as well. You do have to send your commander into danger, but again, like, the more you send your commander into danger, the larger your commander is going to be, and just kind of naturally throughout the game. 5 mana, again, is kind of like that tipping point of being like a middle cost commander to like a higher cost commander. It's like right there. Like, once you get to 6, like, that's a high cost commander in my opinion. So it's not overly impressive. It doesn't have trample or anything. Everybody get the damage. So obviously you got ways to do that, but still, yeah, overall, it's not the worst of the worst, but it's probably a C tier commander. Moving on. Salinza, the Spike Stampede. Cool name. 5/5 beast for 5 mana in, well, I was going to say green, but it's actually in Gruul. Beast spells you cast, cost 2 to cast. Each other beast creature you control enters with additional counter on it. Whenever Salinza or another creature with power 4 or greater enters, you may pay 1 in Gruul. When you do, it fights our creature you don't control. Okay, so here's the thing. I did actually right before the episode. I was like, wait, I forgot to look this up earlier, but are there any persist creatures that can fit in this? No, there are no persist creatures that are beasts that actually, are in these colors. There are 2 beasts, I believe, that are in green and blue, but yeah, this is not that. Anyway, so there are no like combo potential persist within this, I believe, unless I missed something. Okay, let me know if I did miss something. But that being said, outside of combo persist, it's a commander that, again, beast is a less supported tribe than the other ones I mentioned earlier, goblins, cats, zombies, etc. That being said, there are a decent amount of beasts out there and things that you might not realize are beasts actually. Like some really powerful ones, maybe like one that's got one of the most famous ETBs in Commander that just like ends games, like that one, Career Behemoth. Anyways, there are a good amount of beasts out there that are powerful. Reducing their cost is huge, especially, by 2. That's a lot. Again, getting the extra counters is nice. You can do some counter synergies too. And the fighting is cool too. That being said, like, yeah, it is a tribe that's like middle of the road support, but it's a powerful commander around it. So I think overall, like, again, this because like this has more going on than some of the other like tribal, effects out there that we've seen in these commanders, but it is a less supported tribe-ish, essentially, when it comes to like, there's more elf anthems out there and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of beasts out there, but there's like less beast tribal support, if you know what I mean. Okay. Anyways, overall, a very cool commander. I'd say probably middle of the road. Next up, Niv Mizzet Visionary. My goodness. A gross. A 5/5 dragon wizard with flying for 6 mana. Is it your maximum hand size? Whenever a source you control deals non-camping damage to opponent, you draw that many cards. All right, if you didn't get my reaction from this, it is, in my opinion, an S-tier commander. Yes, again, the tipping point, in my opinion, for like a high mana value commander is 6 typically for me. Yeah, I mean, that's still an incredibly powerful commander for what this does. Like, again, like the fact that it's 6 mana, it better be 6 mana for doing this. Giving you no maximum hand size is huge with this because, yeah, you're going to be drawing an absurd amount of cards so easily, so quickly. It's insane. We just got a, what's it called? Bolt Wave? Is that the brand new one we just got? Red card for a single mana sorcery, 3 damage each opponent. Yeah, that's draw 9. That's draw 9 with this. You have a 1 mana card to draw 9. And that's not even, of course, the most powerful things. You knew this. Again, like Price of Progress. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, like, do like 10 damage each opponent, probably. All right, I drew 30 for 2 mana. Okay. Or I have just like Sulfuric Vortex in play, and all of a sudden, or Descendant Avernus. My goodness. And I just deal 2 damage each turn to every player, including myself, but I don't care. I'm getting 6 cards with each trip on the table just for having a 3 mana enchantment in play. And again, I don't have to discard any of those cards. And of course, there's some really powerful things I can do with all those things. I've got ritual effects, I've got untap effects, I've got extra turn effects if I really want to be gross with that. Yeah, this is one where, again, like, you can, like, pre-set up a lot of things, like very group sluggy cards in play, just ready to go. You're dealing damage to everyone, and then literally, and sometimes, like, not yourself too, more so punishing your opponents, but sometimes yourself too, who cares? And then all of a sudden, you put this in play, and you're like, oh, by the way, okay, with this turn on the table, I drew 20 cards. Good for me. Okay, I probably win right now. So yeah, this is a commander that's just, like, literally, you get it down, you probably, if you're set up properly, you probably win pretty quickly. Again, literally just casting Bolt Wave, or whatever that one's called. Sorry if I missed saying that name, or misremembering the name is. But yeah, you deal 3 damage each opponent for 1 mana. This, like, triple Ancestral Recall. Not an instant speed, sure, but, like, okay. Draw 9 for 1 mana. Gross. You probably can win with that. I would hope you can win with that if you can draw 9 cards for 1 mana with a commander. Disgusting. Next up, Poljamar Illusionist, a 4/5 human illusion wizard for 6 mana in blue. Flying. When it enters, choose a creature type. Draw a card for each creature. Control that type. Gross wizards. Why? Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very, very good card in the 99 of any kind of a tribal deck that can utilize Blink. Basically, you're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah. I mean, even if you're not, you're just like, yeah, throw in a tribal deck, you draw a bunch of cards, cool. As a commander itself, which, I mean, no offense to Poljamar, but I think this is going to see more play in the 99 than it will as a commander. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Yeah, I mean, pick a tribe, essentially, and then just go super wide, and then get into play and blink it. Again, and again, 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 again. Draw an absurd amount of cards. So, I think overall, I mean, 6 mana is a good amount. Again, we just talked about that, and it's not like a game finisher right there. Like, I mean, again, it can draw you a lot like Niv, I guess, too. It doesn't, like, keep your no maximum hand size, though, and you need to have, like, a board presence to actually gain a lot from it. Again, like, the difference between this and Niv is that Niv is like, okay, I'm in play. I've already got all these group slug type things, or I literally can cast a 1 mana spell to draw 9 cards, okay? This one's like, okay, I need to have a built board of a specific creature type, or changeling type effects, Masquerade Nexus, whatever, and then all of a sudden, now I get all my value out of it, and I need to blink it to do so. Okay, so like, it's good. It is solid. I mean, this is probably like a, I'm like B plus, A minus. Like, does it deserve to be up there with the A's? Maybe. We're going to go with an A. It has a ton of draw potential, so... And again, you can pick like some of the most supported tribes out there. You can go Merfolk, you can go Wizard, you can go Human, I guess, too. But yeah, you can go pick whatever the most supported tribe that you want to build around, essentially. Or sure, a combination of them if you really want to do that. And like utilize Masquerade Nexus to like make them all the same thing. Sure. And Blink effects, you've got plenty of those. So yeah, overall, obviously, it has a ton of draw potential. It's not to Niv levels, though. I'm going to go with A. It's like A minus, B plus, okay? And then finally... Coma World Eater. I forgot to mention, actually, I feel like Pelukranos is going to have a thing to say about Coma, you know, gaining that title now as well. For some reason, there's a dash in this title as well, whereas Pelukranos does not have that. Both World Eaters, though. Anyways, different worlds. 8/12 Serpent for 7 mana in Simic. This spell can't be countered. Trample Ward 4. Deals combination player create 4 3/3 blue serpent creature tokens. Name Coma's Coil. I mean, this is quite powerful. I don't think it's quite on the level, though, of the other two. And there might be players out there that disagree with, again, like the Fumulus or whatever the name of the insect one is. Like, that one just can control the board and just keep the board down the entire time if it needs to. Like, it just can. You can just tutor up. Again, Dictative Erebos. Okay, you're not doing anything. None of you are doing anything unless you deal with this. This one, again, is hard to deal with. Okay, once you get it down, it is 7 mana, which again is on the higher end, obviously, of commanders, the highest end of all these commanders. Once you get it down and start hitting, you're in a good spot. I mean, again, 8/12, it's a 3-shot KO, can very easily be a 2-shot KO or a 1-shot KO. Not too hard to do so. You're not in, white. You don't have a lot of like double strike type effects, obviously, but you do have still Fire Trigger, that kind of thing too. So sure, if you can give it double strike, you can swing through, get an extra +3/+0 or whatnot with like a, oh my gosh, the Locks and Warhammer, that kind of thing as well, or other kind of ways to pump it, or double up its power or whatnot. Yeah, you got ways you can just one-shot players and also just make a giant army, and especially with the double strike now, you get 8 3/3s. It's very, very, very powerful, especially when you have, like, again, enchantments in play that are like, hey, maybe draw a card if creature with power of 3 or greater enters. And you're like, oh, I just had 4 of them. Actually, no, 8. Cool, I draw 8 cards. With some setup, you can do some pretty crazy things with this. It's a lot of power. Again, you can take advantage of power in many, many ways in green as well, like draw cards equal to power, get lands equal to power, lots of different things, like pump the rest of your team based on the power. So, yeah. I'd say overall, like, this is like solid A. I don't think it's S tier though. Like, I think there's gonna be some arguments probably that this is like S tier maybe. It's not as good in my opinion as previous Coma. I don't think. Like, the previous Coma was like you get it down and you just start making that army and you can protect Coma with Indestructible, which you can, I guess, argue with like Ward 4. Ward 4 is basically hexproof essentially. It's basically hexproof versus like Indestructibility. It just depends on what's better, but also that one can like tap things down. It's not quite as big, but like, yeah, overall, I think the other one's more powerful. That's actually not even supposed to be like part of the argument for this, obviously, but like just comparing, I do think Niv and Fumulus are on a different level of that S tier. So I think I feel pretty good overall on where things ended up. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, though. Let me know where you think I'm right. Let me know where you think I'm very wrong on as well. Again, constructive criticism, please. Yeah, there's been a lot of great discussions. I love the discussions around, like, brand new commanders and, tier list rankings like this, because everyone has a different perspective, of course. This coming from my perspective and, how I think these would rank up in my personal play group and, like, what we play with and, like, what's allowed and what's not allowed. Like, again, Tiny Bones, I mean, maybe some of you would like be a little bit higher because it'd be like, okay, I'll just discard and everyone, no one has a hand. Kind of like Fumulus where it's like, okay, I'll lock down the board in a different way. Locking down hands is a little bit different in my opinion, okay? But yeah, it just depends. Like, and if you allow combo or no combo or certain combos, like a convoluted combo, it just depends. So overall, I feel pretty good about the rankings. There's some pretty exciting commanders from this set as well. And yeah, I'm definitely going to do an episode at some point where I talk about like which ones I'm excited to build and which ones I might not build as well, and kind of give my reasoning for that too. But yeah, thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. And again, comment below and let me know your thoughts. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. As always, comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.